I, I'm not really completely familiar with your work, David, but the stuff that I have seen in the show now um, moves from a really specific kind of content to a specific kind of occurrence. And I'm wondering how you think about narrative and what what the kinetic part of your work does to set that up. Is that a is that a question that is is answerable?
Let me find my mute button here. Yeah, and unmute myself. Yeah, I thought it was interesting too, like thinking about when Kathy was talking about Jonathan's version of storytelling versus my, or just kind of a literal versus like, I guess, or it's not even a versus. It's like, but yeah, they all do tell a story. I think maybe in a way that can be read in a variety of interpretations, I suppose. However, when I talk about my work, I do like to I like to tell a story. Like for example, the piece that's in the window space. I don't know if everybody's seen the work in the gallery, but that obviously, or I can explain the piece. I guess maybe that'd be a good place to start. I did this residency last summer where I was aboard a research vessel, and we went across the Pacific Ocean from Astoria, Portland, Oregon, to Hawaii, Honolulu, and we were scanning the seafloor as we went, and I love being on the water. I've done a number of these residencies where I'm on ships, and just an amazing feeling. And it's inspired work that's based on water. I like the physical movement of the ship. I don't get seasick, luckily. So, but I really dig that part of it, like the way your body. I've even had researchers come in to my exhibitions that are experts in seasickness, and talking about like how it's not just an inner ear thing, it's actually visual, but it's also physical, like the way your body sort of acclimates to that movement. And it's all very fascinating, and I just love it. I mean, just being on the water. And so of course it was an amazing experience for me. I brought a CNC machine, which is the opposite of 3D printing. It's a subtractive process, and we were carving the seafloor as we went, and collecting data and mapping the data and playing with the data. But also I loved being up on the top deck of this ship. It was called Falcor, which is, if you've seen Never Ending Story, you know where that's coming from. It's a reference to that movie. But my favorite place to be on Falcor was called the Monkey Deck, which was above the bridge, like 3 stories above the water. And you just look out and you see and horizon. That's all you see. There's nothing. It's beautiful. It's starkly beautiful. The blue of the Pacific, and no any kind of human anything is visible, except the ship and you and the crew. But every once in a while, you see a fish, a flying fish, or we did see a couple of whales. And disturbingly, every once in a while, you'd see a little bit of human stuff, trash, basically. We didn't go through the Pacific Trash Patch, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, but we kind of skirted north of it. And so every once in a while, I'd see like a bucket or a rope. And it's not necessarily like microplastic. It will become microplastic, I suppose, at some point. But just that contrast of being out in this area where there's very little human, seems to be very little human, anything human made, and seeing like a flare gun float past was, I would say, wonderfully troubling, I guess would be the best way to put it. So I think that's where that piece came from. I collected all of the data. I brought my old laptop with me, which has an accelerometer in it that measures X, Y, and Z movement. And I could just hack into that sensor and just make some text files of the entire 9 days that I was at sea. And so that is what is articulating those bags in the gallery. And I chose bags because I think it's a very ubiquitous sort of – sorry, these plastic bags are everywhere, you know, and so those are all dancing in the gallery beautifully, I think, formally beautifully, but it's a kind of a troubling. So I like that kind of push and pull. So anyway, like that's how I talk about my work, and everything has a story behind it. But I'm not always there to tell the story, and this is not always like I wouldn't necessarily even go through all of that in like a didactic about the piece. But I do like the idea that it can be read in a number of ways, and maybe like have something alluding to that in the title. I think we're talking. What are we, Joe? We're kind of back and forth between the wilderness, which you know, versus telepresent trash, and maybe it's like the wilderness and telepresent trash. I don't know where we're at on that. It's a new piece, which incidentally has a lot of 3D printed parts, which are not really shown that much. They're up in the ceiling. They're kind of doing their job of articulating those bags.